record. Okay. This is Mr. Moreau and Atlas here once again. And we have with us, actually, we're talking about acoustics and sound things today. Atlas, it's not your turn. Our guest for today, could you introduce us and tell us what your bachelor's degree was in?
Yeah, Chris Antonetti. My bachelor's degree was in audio arts and acoustics, specifically focusing on acoustics. There are a lot of different concentrations with the degree, but mine was specifically sound moving through media type applications, not as opposed to recording or sound reinforcement or something like that. So yeah, acoustics was my concentration. Audio arts and acoustics was the actual degree name.
Excellent, thank you. As far as, like, you just said a degree in acoustics, basically, what type of jobs would that degree prepare you for? Where somebody who did get a degree in acoustics, what would you be going for afterwards?
Yeah, so a lot of them are consultant type degrees, consulting for an architect or a manufacturer. There's basically two major tracks that acoustics goes. It's either room design, either you want a room, some kind of space to sound in some way, or noise control, you don't want to hear sound in some way. So there would be consulting architects with room design of, say, a performance space where you want sound from a stage or something to go to an audience, or even room design of an office if you want to, which is connected to noise control, where if you don't want noise to go throughout the whole office, you don't want people to hear people talking on the other side of the office, you don't want to hear the HVAC, the heating system blowing. Those are all, you're going to have acoustic consultants working with architects for that kind of thing. Even for outdoor applications, civil engineering, they can consult in like the barriers they build for highways so you don't hear highway noise, or building around power plants, they'll build rows of trees to stop power plant noise. And even in manufacturing engineering, they're used, for example, luxury cars as opposed to your standard cars. Luxury cars, they'll engineer types of the way they want it to sound, not just the engine, but even like the way the doors close or something like that. The acoustician will be working with that type of application. So a lot of consulting type applications, manufacturing, architecture, engineering.
Quick follow-up for you there. In college, in that area, I spent 4 years working in radio, and our recording studio had the cones, the black cones and everything, I don't even know how to describe it, but the insulation type along the walls that was to reduce echoes for the best sound quality in there. In general, do people in a studio like that normally install it themselves, or do they normally hire some sort of acoustician like you were talking about?
Yeah, I think it would just depend on what they're doing. I remember when I was in college, we visited this recording studio this guy had made back in the 70s, and I think he just wanted to look really cool, so he kind of put things everywhere. They didn't really make any sense, but I think, yeah, generally if you were probably serious about it, you would consult with some kind of architecture firm or something with that.
Excellent. One of the cleverest applications you made me think of that I saw of this, I guess a little over a year ago, my wife and I went to, I think it was Dogfish Head Brewery in Delaware, and the upstairs eating section, they said it had been absolutely horrible acoustics and really loud. And what they did is they had a good thick foam, but it was under all the tables, under all the chairs. So super discreet, but it was to reduce, like, when the echoes bounced off the floor and then hit the underside of the table and chairs, that was a good dampening effect that did what they wanted to do. And that's probably in more places that I've never seen before, but I was feeling under the tables there and noticing it and asked them about it, and they said that was what it was for. So I'll have to start feeling under tables and chairs more often to see how frequent they do that.
Yeah.
But
you can see that too. Some places will have like curtains hanging or something like that, and they
Hmm.
look decoration, but actually can have acoustic purposes.
Excellent. My next question for you. I wrote these down. And this one is a little bit longer, but it says, when I was walking down the streets of Chicago with you many years ago, I remember you pulling earplugs out. I've actually told students about this one in the past, but I remember you pulling earplugs out of your pocket when we approached a construction site. You had them in this little thing on your keychain, if I recall.
Yeah.
And it was my understanding that you did this because you were so very aware of how your hearing could be impacted by exposure to high decibels. We're going to be in my class talking more about decibel levels. The cat and baby are playing together right now. They both like that one book, so they get along pretty well. I'll pull them back over in a second. But anyway, sorry. So you pulled out your earplugs. We're professional here. You pulled out your earplugs while we were going around because you were aware of the effects of exposure to decibel levels there. Could you tell us more about that protection and when it's necessary?
Yeah. Yeah. This is related a lot to there's just workplace standards for this kind of thing, but this is related to the design of the ear. In my studies, we also do audiology type studies, so we know kind of the biology of how the ear works. And basically, you have your outer ear, which is a drum. It's just kind of a vibrating like drum head type thing, which goes into your middle ear, which are three bones connected together, which then go into a cochlea, which looks like a shell. And inside that shell are all sorts of small kind of hairs, and those hairs pick up, yeah, little cilia. They pick up different frequencies depending where in the cochlea it is. And so there's always a threat, like with a loud noise of eardrums popping, and those can heal, those can be more serious or not. But the greater threat is wearing down those cilia inside the cochlea, which we found that over long periods of time, depending on the level of sound, those can get damaged. So, for example, like workplace requirements show that like if something's at 90 dBA, that over 8 hours, that can cause damage to your ear. So that would be a jackhammer at 1 meter away, or a jet engine. Well, jet engine would be 110 at 100 meters. A busy street would be like 90 dB. So that for 8 hours, or like if you're in a factory, you have some kind of machine running for 8 hours. So that's why people have to wear hearing protection for that type of thing. You don't want that to wear down your ear and then you have hearing loss. But it's not equal on all frequencies. We have the dB is based on the amount of sound pressure coming, because sound is the vibrations in the air and the amount of energy coming through that sound pressure. But we have kind of a curve depending on frequency. So human ears don't hear everything along the same frequency. We hear talking frequencies, which is about 4,000 to 6,000 hertz. We hear that a lot better than we hear really low or really high frequencies. So things at talking frequencies actually are louder to us and can cause more damage easier than things at a lower frequency. That's why, like, you hear something really high pitched and loud, it hurts more than something kind of low pitched and loud.
My wife's gonna want to
and then so
oh, go ahead.
The earplugs that I had that I kept with me, we have like normal earplugs, like the little foams ones you get. Those just cut everything off. They just kind of block your ear, and that's why it sounds muffled when you use them. But if you get more designed earplugs, they go along with the curve of how the human ear hears, and so it lowers the frequencies. Doesn't just lower upper frequencies, but lower frequencies as well. So everything is just quieter, and it still protects your ear as well. So I would keep those also for going to a concert or something like that, because a rock concert could get to 100, 110 decibels, depending where you're standing. And if you're there for 2 hours, that could cause hearing damage. But if you have good earplugs, then you can still enjoy it, and it's not too loud that it's destroying your ears for the next time.
Thank you. My wife will want to hear part of this too, because she's a speech language pathologist, and she had to take classes in audiology and reads. It's audiogram. Is audiograms or audiographs? I don't know if that's your area. I'll have to check there. But the students or people who have hearing issues show these scales of where they what frequencies they hear best, because it's not just universal. You have trouble with it, and depending on exactly like you're saying, depending on exactly what frequency you have trouble hearing, it will affect, for her realm of work, it affects what vowel sounds and things like a TH or an F or a K is actually different frequency levels. So people's different hearings were impacted more with that. That's, yeah. And I'm always a little bit depressed almost telling my students about part of this stuff, because like, I don't want to tell them like, you can't listen to loud music and don't turn your music up all the way. But it's a little bit depressing that for a lot of earbuds and a lot of AirPods and a lot of things that you put in your ear, if you listen to it at max volume, that if you did that for 15 to 30 minutes, depending on what max volume is, if somebody else did that to you, you could effectively sue them if it was a workplace. Like, yeah. You'd be violating OSHA restrictions, and people do it to themselves on a regular basis, which is just sad a little bit. But I got two more quick ones for you. So I'm getting eaten over here. You ended up going into a career that wasn't related to acoustics. But do you ever find yourself using or applying things that you learned in your studies in your everyday life or career?
Yeah, a little bit. Well, right now I'm in seminary. I'm in school to study to be a pastor, which will be in the spring. But related to church design and things like that, going into how worship is done in churches, that's actually a big part of what acousticians do, because you don't see like opera halls and things being built nowadays, but people still build churches, they design churches. And so as far as like performance spaces and where you need sound to go, that's a big deal. So I mean, I've written papers about this for some of my classmates too, about the type of materials you want in a room, depending on the type of worship, the materials that you'd use, and then noise issues and intelligibility. If you have like a band, or if you have chanting, or if you have preaching, there's kind of different requirements you would have, and that kind of helps you out if you kind of know the basics of what you're doing in that situation.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you.
Bit, not a lot.
No, that's cool. No, and I just have to ask, do you still carry the earplugs with you, or is that not something you carry too frequently at this point?
I don't carry them too frequently, but I don't walk around the city very much anymore either. So
Chicago is very different than others. My wife and I were in Japan, walking through Tokyo almost this exact time last year. And I wouldn't have had a chance to share this with you. It was really cool. There was a construction site, and there was a big digital meter. I've got a picture of it showing here's the sound level inside of the construction site, and here's the sound level outside of the construction site in decibels. So like at the they weren't working at the time. So it was like 32 dBs in there and like 31 or something right outside. But I looked it up online later on to see like how effective it is, but they're trying to show you like, no, we care about your hearing. We're trying to not impact the day-to-day life too much. So we're using some sound protection for you, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Final question for you before we let you go. What was one of your favorite interesting sound facts, concepts, or principles that you learned during your undergraduate work?
Yeah, I think I was trying to think about this. I think my favorite classes with this were psychoacoustics and cognition of sound. That it's really easy to trick our ears, and our ears also on our brain work together to kind of fill in things for us. For example, there's a thing called the McGurk effect, that if you play a video of someone saying something, like a video of their lips saying it, it doesn't really matter what the sound is. Like if the sound is playing da, but they're making a ga sound, and you see that recording, you assume that it says ga. If you close your eyes, it's da, but if you see the video, your brain says, oh, well, that's what I see, so that must be what it is.
And that's called the what, McGurk?
McGurk effect, yeah.
Okay,
You can
cool.
see videos of it online and stuff too. Um, it's pretty interesting to try. Um, Another one, my like senior thesis was on timbre, which is really interesting because it's basically filling in what like the thing we don't know about sound. Like if a piano and a trumpet are played at the same pitch at the same volume, what's the difference? And we don't really know a whole lot about what the difference is. And so that's what my senior thesis was about. Kind of, I was taking the attack and release of different sounds and cutting those off and just having that middle part of the sound and seeing if people could tell the difference between like a trumpet or a keyboard or a cello or something like that at the same frequency. And it's kind of harder to figure out. So there is a sense that like the attack and release of the sound does have a effect on that. But that's the kind of thing that we're like with synthesizers, people try to make synthesizers sound like a certain timbre, like a certain instrument, but we really haven't been able to do that successfully. You have to use samplers where you just record the actual instrument making the sound. So in some ways it's really easy to trick the ear. In some ways it's really hard to trick the ear. And I think that's really interesting about the way our ears work and our brains with acoustics.
Chris, that is absolutely fascinating. I appreciate your stuff there. That sounds like a really interesting thesis that you did your work on. The work, the attack and release stuff. We assuming we, I honestly don't know when we'll be back in the classroom, and I don't know what the rest of the school year is going to look like. But one thing I like to do is just use simple, what's it called? A free program that I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but we basically zoom in Audacity's the program.
Yeah.
We just zoom in on the sound wave. So for a couple different sounds, we're zooming all the way in to look at the actual waveform, which of course is never a perfect sine wave. Well, I won't spoil for them just yet what makes it a perfect sine wave, but it's a variety of different shapes, and that's going to be related to what you're talking about with that, the shape of it, and then cutting off part of the beginning or the end. But that stuff is just fascinating. I think sound is really cool stuff, and I really appreciate you taking the time to answer some of my questions here and do this for my students.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add, or is it okay if I just end our recording here?
That's all. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you again. I'm going to hit end on this recording. Hit stop right there.